The markets have fallen sharply, inflation is still running riot in Australia, and investors are rightfully concerned. Although Gary Glover is using this market opportunity to find the companies that are holding up in comparison to the rest of the market that's been falling. He's looking at the industries, the groups, and those that look better positioned to weather the storm. Gary, how would you describe the selection and the approach that you're using at the moment and why?
Yeah, no, sometimes the market, unfortunately the market doesn't go up in a straight line. They'll have a few pauses and few pullbacks, and obviously the Aussie market has pulled back quite a lot more than the US market. The US market's been pullback's been pretty light, pretty small. But yeah, saying that, you look at the last 2 weeks, even though the Aussie market has pulled back, go and look at the volume from that 2 Fridays ago. So obviously, Friday was end of last week was down, and the end of the previous week before that was or 2 weeks ago was down as well. But the volumes on those down days were very light. And even look at the volume there, you can sort of see the volume's gotten lighter and lighter. So even the 3 down days that were down here, end of last week they're all a lighter volume, Chris. So there's not, we're not seeing expanding volume there. So, so until we sort of see any signs of distribution, this is just a corrective decline, the way I look at it here. So, as per our our roadmap cycle suggests that, this should be, a positive year, the second half, without being stellar. It'll just be a bit of a slow grind higher here. And typically, we haven't, in the last 60 years, I haven't seen a pullback larger than 5% in the second half of the year. So just tells us any pullback should be sort of small here. So, that is 11 or 12 weeks now. So 12 weeks we've pulled back from there. So it's not exactly impulsive, is it? So, it's gone up 4 weeks and it's pulled back 3 times as long now here, and it hasn't taken the low out there. So you've got to be that as a bit constructive there. So until we see some aggressive selling, we're just having a bit of a pause in the trend here. Is the way I look at it.
So if we're looking at the weekly chart that we've got on screen here, it's giving us a bit more comfort to put it in the context of how the market's rallied, how it's pulled back. But you did mention there were some more volatile days in the last week and the last couple of weeks as well. So does that sort of bring to mind any different ways to trade or any sort of adages in your research that kind of you reference back to help you stay the course and stick to your trading plan in these conditions?
Yeah, as we know, Chris, we're sort of, when we do have pullbacks in the market, we don't want to be rushing to the stocks that have had the biggest drawdowns, the biggest pullbacks, and being sold off the most aggressively. We actually want to be doing the opposite of that. We want to sort of see which stocks have sort of have held up the best. So as the market's been going down, stocks should be sort of, the strongest should be just sort of going sideways. And 2 things I like to sort of see is that sort of maybe congestive, corrective pattern, and hopefully sort of staying closer to the high. So staying on the higher side of the range, or staying as close as possible as the old high. And the second thing I'd like to sort of see is just a lack of participation. So, when we see trading volumes decline, and there's plenty, it's funny, I just saw so many stocks there, sort of, Janus Henderson, I think Helios is another one. It's just, there's so many stocks in the 300 that are sort of, that have run up, made a few high lows here, hit a bit of a ceiling. I've had a couple of tests of that ceiling, and I've just congested and pulled back underneath that old high. But the last 3 or 4 weeks of this decline here, we've just seen a bit of a pullback in some of those stocks, and it's very corrective, sort of, a bit sort of sideways, sideways to sort of slightly downward channel, but seeing no selling volume in some of those stocks. So those are the ones I'm looking for. So there's definitely quite a few of them out there. So quite a few stocks that are congesting underneath the highs here, and there's been very little selling trading volumes over the last month there. So I view that as sort of constructive. It's kind of like the Dow Jones. If you actually look at the chart of the Dow Jones, that has really sort of gone up to the old high there, and the last 3 or 4 weeks here is just sort of just holding underneath that high here. So so looking for sort of stocks that are sort of something like that, up near the recent high there, congesting under the high, And yeah, if we sort of break out to the upside here, we'll see like some sort of pivot point there. So good, strong day or strong volume there. That's the ones to follow there.
Well, we'll jump into the trading shares that you've picked out for this week in a second. We should probably touch in on the other US indices so far. So the NASDAQ, as it's been moving, you had that cup and handle, it's coming up, and then it started to slow in its pace a little bit. Do you read anything into that slowing pace?
Yeah, so with obviously big range day, then an inside range, then an outside range, then an inside range. So yeah, so we're just getting a little bit of a congestion. They're probably due for a bit of consolidation after this run here. But again, I think any pullback's going to be sort of mild here, Chris. It is sort of July, August. If you look at sort of the pre-election year sort of seasonal chart, and you look at the third year charts in general, that usually can be a bit of a messy period. That usually you sort of can see a little bit of a corrective, like a little, ABC, little three-way pullback in that period there. So it should be pretty short. Should only really be, like a little three-way decline on the daily chart. So nothing too big on the weekly. So probably not even that big. Probably just a small one there. Probably unlikely to break that red line there, to be honest. And then move higher here. So, but yeah, so it looks pretty constructive. I mean, the S&P's gone back, obviously just trailing that upper trend line there. I think we sort of suggested it probably looks similar to that 21 move there. We get sort of track the trend line higher. You might have a few little down weeks there. Maybe you get a 3 or 4 week congestion period, or a little tiny little correction there if it does sort of pop a little higher. But again, it just should sort of climb up here. So can't see anything too negative here. Just not seeing anything. The volumes are not seeing too many distribution weeks or days there. So yeah.
Well, if we take the opportunity to now open up to the trading shares you picked out for this week, you've gone through, as you're mentioning, ideally we're looking at the momentum leaders, we're looking at the top themes, the top sectors, the companies that have those good tailwinds behind them. But you're also noted that we are seeing opportunities here, some that have had pullbacks and are compressing under the highs. So when you're looking at Orica, obviously it's been a bit of a trading range going through. What's coming to mind on this chart here?
Yeah, just sort of fun, just sort of noticing this. Oftentimes I do look for sort of false breaks and stuff there. So come back and retest the old lows there. But probably just a sort of strong pattern is sort of when if you've been trending up, and often sort of see it with that little overlapping, like 3 overlapping peaks as well. So we've got little 1, 2, 3 overlapping peaks there all the way up there. They can pull back and just go back and retest the previous low, and then break that and then continue the upward move. Because that's still a fairly robust trend. Just had a bit of a pause underneath under the high here again. This one here, you'd probably like to see less volume on that decline. Volume levels maybe a little higher than you think there. But but look, if we see a reversal here and a strong move up here, this is definitely one to follow. We'll likely go back and retest the high here. So just a pattern that I've noticed historically is sort of something that sort of sets up here. Ideally, we'd like to see lots of these ones there, but probably just see that a little bit more corrective and a little bit less volume there. But there's definitely a couple in the report here that are probably look a bit better than this one.
Okay. Well, SEK, they've definitely had an ad campaign that's caught my children's attention. So that's something they've got going for them at the moment. Yeah. But look, you got what looks to be shoulder, and head here. And then you've also mentioning for SEK, a 3-wave ABC. So what is that pattern? How do we draw it? And why is it important at this stage?
Yeah, so probably the most important thing is here, we've sort of got our October low, then we've sort of got a first high low in December, and now we've got a potential sort of, second sort of high low here in end of June there. And that sort of corrective process there, so probably a little messy here on the daily, but the weekly will definitely sort of see a clear ABC sort of from that February high. Definitely got a fairly sort of, that's, I guess, a corrective decline there where it overlaps there. So that's probably the bigger structure there looking at the weekly. If we drill into the daily here, we've got pretty interesting price action occurring here. We've got elevated volume levels, which we like to see, because normally these volumes all sort of come in either at lows or highs, so as either accumulation or distribution. So good sign that we're seeing elevated volumes after this sort of corrective pattern here, and we now have the appearance of like a inverted sort of head and shoulders here. I'm not a massive head and shoulders sort of trader there, but just interesting. We're sort of get one sort of setting up here really at the moment, and the volume's pretty constructive with that as well. So got a few sort of GAN lines overlaid there. I don't usually as I used to use them, maybe 15 years ago. They're sort of just can provide some assistance there, sort of on pullbacks, and then when stocks are sort of running there to sort of just some angles to sort of keep an eye on there. So, but kind of view this as sort of constructive here. So I think if we saw a couple more down days here, pretty light volume sort of selling there, and it just sort of hold tight on that right shoulder there. If we saw a nice strong reversal off that right shoulder there, definitely one to follow, I think.
Now, an update for Credit Corp CCP, which is a trade that you've got in the portfolio and doing pretty well on. You had cup handle here, and then it broke out, jumped up, rallied. So broke out pretty well, and then you've got some few volume indicators here where the volume was dropping, and then the volume sort of increased with some green bars. What's the trade update, and what are you looking at now?
Yeah, look, I like this sort of macro. So from sort of probably a medium to longer term perspective there. So really just looking for a short term sort of catalyst there. And we got that little cup and handle there, a little BCP at the low there, little pivot point sort of B wave break. So just gave us a chance to sort of get some, get set at some good levels there. And we definitely saw sort of the volume characteristics were positive as well. So we're definitely seeing stronger volume on the up, lighter volume on the pullback. So just pretty constructive there. So it's had a bit of a pop here now, but just starting to see a little bit of a pause. So we've had a pullback, gone back to retest the high. So I'm looking for a little ABC here. So looking for a little congestion, a little breather pattern here. And then, potentially we sort of, if we can consolidate here a bit longer, every chance of sort of, breaking up here out of this pattern now. So I do like this longer term. So I sort of have built up a bit of position there. Have sort of done a little bit of trimming into some of that heat, but really looking to sort of put more position back on here really. So just, so far pretty constructive there. I do like this overall there. Just looking for another sort of safe, entry to add to this position now. I think it's just, I think this potentially has a bigger move in it still. The trend has definitely sort of been building here, so I think it looks pretty positive overall.
Another one is JHG, Jens Henderson Group, and you're talking about the European asset manager. When we're looking at this chart, it's pretty clear. So the highs 67, 68, that kind of region. It came down the last October to October to coming up at an October low, coming down to sort of 32, 33. But this is a critical part of the October low, 0, 1, 2, 3. So what happens next, Gary?
So this is the chart we should be looking for, Chris. So we're seeing a bit of a, obviously a downtrend, and a bit of a washout low there. So in terms of our sort of downward channel, we're sort of now broken, above the old swing high. So we're basically sort of, a bit like that stage 2, broken out of, gone to a new high, sort of, I think Stan Weinstein was sort of probably, I think he uses like a 30-week moving average or something like that. But we've just sort of broken that downward downtrend, and we're sort of starting to build here now. So, we're really sort of starting to sort of come out of that pattern there and build a series of high lows here. And like the last thing we see here is we've gone back to, retest the high there recently. In the last 3 or 4 weeks there, we've had obviously a bit of weakness in the market here, but it's been holding kind of tight there, sort of sideways. And look, with that volume, there's just no, like if this was sort of negative, we'll all the bears out there say, we're going to go into a massive decline here. Where's the selling? Where's, if the one thing I know about bear markets is that distribution takes place and aggressive selling gets in there and it leads to larger declines. So when I see basically 3 or 4 weeks sitting underneath the high, I see no selling, very, very little volume. That's just not what you sort of see before big decline normally. Yeah, there might be a couple of examples out there historically, but predominantly when you see that light volume congestion under the high, I'd argue that 80% of them are probably going to break up. So the odds sort of favour a move up here. So just that's what we're looking for. Stocks sort of build a series of highs, keep making sort of high lows, congesting under the high, having a bit of a breather, sideways move, light volume. This is pretty constructive. So I just can't see anything too negative with this pattern there. This is what I'm looking for. So I think something like Helios was another one in that healthcare. It's sort of sitting tight there. Even I think ACL has sort of done something similar as well. It's another healthcare stock which is sort of just congesting there. I think APM, which we've had on there as well, it's sort of congesting under a little bit of a high as well. So there's so many stocks that are just sort of congesting here under peak. So I just sort of saw a lot of stocks make this pattern there, and I'm not earmarking Janus Hennes in particular, but this is just this is a broad-based European fund manager. So just sort of gives you, that's more sort of broad rather specific appeal there. But that's basically sort of what the market is. That's what the market's showing us at the moment. So I just don't see that as typically too negative at this stage.
Well, that's a good setup to be looking through as we're filtering through. We'll look for them, and no doubt we'll be trying to find them on Fridays when we're going through the 30-30 list. The other ones that you've got in today's report are two travel companies. So you've got Corporate Travel Management, CTD. Again, when we look at this, we see $22 coming down to $17.90. That fall was sort of sideways and then got pretty fast. And you'd note that strong volume, huge volume. What's happening now? Is it sort of slowing down, maybe finding a bit of support? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so these have been sort of pretty strong out of the October lows there. So we're sort of just seeing price sort of built here and have a pretty good run there. And obviously that coming out of the pandemic, there's just been a bit of a pretty strong growth area. But now we've had just a price correction, so something healthy sort of from the high. So trend's still up for mine here. Just probably don't want to see this come back. Don't want to see too big a correction there. So although this has had a larger price correction there, still sort of do like this sort of sector here. So probably just looking for some of these leadership, sort of like corporate travel, which didn't raise any money through the pandemic, which is, unbelievable really if you think about it. And Flight Centre, which obviously did raise money like everyone else, but it is probably viewed as a bit of a leader in that travel space as well. There's a couple other good travel companies around, but these are two that I sort of do like. Did trade them successfully out of the lows. That's probably oftentimes, if you have success in trades, there's a bias to go back to those same stocks. So there's probably a little bit of that there for me. But corporate travel is definitely, pretty well run company there, good metrics and stuff there. But just starting to see a bit of volume profile starting to increase here after, there's been a bit of a sideways move, a little bit of a pullback. But coming back to sort of some, sort of key Fibonacci levels, it's just some timing watching as well. So, I thought they came back a little bit deeper and retested some of those lows. I'd definitely be sort of adding some of these positions back in. But I think at this stage they're on the watch list there, watching this pretty closely there. So I think that these things can probably go back and retest their highs there eventually.
So should we parallel that to Flight Centre? Maybe you could also just explain what the boxes are and why you've highlighted them.
Yeah, look, I just sort of was just on the way up here. I sort of like this here, so I was just here to sort of watch the little, again, we go up and then we congest sideways and then we break up, congest sideways, and then obviously this, once this last sort of congestion, we've ended up breaking down here. So, there's this, it's a little bit of Darvis box sort of theory there, but it is, we are looking to sort of try and, buy those stocks that are running, running strong there, obviously trending up. But then at some point they will have a pause and then we can come back in again once they sort of break out of those pauses and stuff there. So it can lead opportunities there. But we've had a fairly decent decline here. I personally would like to see it come back to at least the 50% mark, which is sort of close to 18. maybe it comes back to where this sort of last low started there on the way up, which is probably close to the 1750. But yeah, so somewhere at there is sort of where I'm looking at there. But we've, apart from those sort of two, larger down days there hasn't been too much volume there through the sort of decline here as well. Even, the last week here is still pretty light here. So just drifting back here on some lighter volumes there, which is all right. So, so I think it's just a healthy price correction there. Just looking for an entry, maybe slightly lower here, which would be ideal.
Well, there's some good ones to look at in the market, and a good approach to take to the market to understand how to unpack the charts and what to look for as we're seeing the market sort of drift back. Maybe some companies holding up better than others. And quite often you'll give us a nice quote or some sort of adage. So is there anything that's coming to mind for you in this kind of market cycle that we could leave on?
Yeah, you set me up there, Chris, haven't you? So got me up for the, I know Mark Minervini says this all the time there, but you really do need to have sort of sit out power. This is one of my 10 commandments. Actually, is actually number 10. Is something that I value. I did it pretty well in 21, 22. I did it pretty well in the first half of 22, 23, but I didn't do it so well in the second half of that year. And but you need to be able to do nothing when the market is sort of is weak. As he says, the undisciplined and the unskilled are laying the foundations for your success. So so it's important. Sometimes markets break lower here and they turn negative. You just need to be able to sort of sit out what's going through that period there. So for those that sort of don't know how to sit out, just if I was going to look at one little crude line there, I'd be looking at the 50-day moving average. If I'd stock had broken below the 50-day moving average, that should be an alarm bell going off. I shouldn't really be shouldn't be sort of caught too many stocks that are broken below the 50.
Well, that's a good filter for us to look at and try find trading opportunities that are holding at around slightly above the 50-day moving average. So to that point, we'll look towards Friday and we'll look at the top 30 launchpad and the top 30 momentum companies and see how they reference that 50-day moving average.
Yeah, just look at that. Not that I set it up with this chart here, but look at the flight. That red line is the 50-day moving average there. Obviously, price congested on top of the 50 and then broke out of that range. It's came back and retested, paused off the 20-day in that second box. And I think in the third box, it came back and congested under the 50 again, built on top of the 50 and then started to break up out of it. So, and then the last break here, we've broken the 50-day and then really plummeted pretty hard. So I'd say it's not rocket science, but it does work for every stock, of course, but it's a reasonably sort of, if you haven't got a tool yet, it's definitely one that I'd for the new traders there to sort of add, just something to start with there, and then you can, tweak it and add it, add some other things to your arsenal as you get more experienced.
Nice. Well, they're good ways to look at the market and good quote to end on. Thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
Gary's talked about finding leading themes in stocks. We've got that on the Friday videos with the 30-30 list, and then also drills down in more detail. And we pulled out some snippets of previous interviews talking about inflation and cycles and different pattern setups, and then the whole playlist on the right-hand side. Left-hand side is Gary's Twitter handle if you want to follow him there.